Hey everyone, and welcome back to the WellBe Podcast, designed to help you learn, expand what you thought was possible, and become as empowered as you can be in your health. Thanks for tuning back in for the 7th season of the WellBe Podcast, which starts right now. This conversation is with Hannah Bronfman, who is many things, but most famously a social media influencer and fitness and lifestyle entrepreneur. And I decided to have her on the WellBe Podcast because she told me an incredible story about something that happened to her and a healing journey she went on that I couldn't believe, and I just had to share it with you guys. You'll hear her story and understand some fascinating root causes involving the mouth and dental surgery with far-reaching implications for hard-to-solve chronic health cases, and in her case, infertility. Before we jump in, unless you're driving, then don't do this. But otherwise, if you're holding your phone and haven't yet ever left a review of the WellBe Podcast, please do it right now. It takes less than a minute. And if you've ever gotten anything out of a WellBe Podcast episode before, this is your way to tell me. Thank you for leaving that review. If you don't know how to do it, scroll all the way down on the WellBe Podcast page and click Write a Review, a few words and a few stars, and then press Submit. And thank you so much for, in general, listening to the WellBe Podcast. Now let's dive in with Hannah Bronfman. Hannah, thank you for being here.
It's so nice to be here. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
So, Hannah, there are so many things we could talk about on this interview because, as I said, you've been in the wellness world for quite some time. HBFit is really focused on all things fitness and wellness lifestyle. So you have lots to share, as was your book. But specifically, there was a story that you told on one of your social media platforms, and also just to me last time I saw you, that really intrigued me, about an experience with your mouth health and biologic dentistry. And it really felt like something that was a real WellBe story to tell, in that you really discovered some root causes of symptoms that were normally not seen as connected to your mouth. And I'd love to just have you tell that story because I think it was really incredible.
Absolutely. Okay. So the dental journey that I've been on has definitely been full of emotional ups and downs. And I never thought I was going to experience such dental trauma. Especially because I never had any cavities growing up, anything like that. But I got into a bike accident about 6 years ago, actually the day after my husband proposed to me. So I was a wee bit hungover, sure. And I was riding a city bike in New York City without a helmet, which I do not recommend. And maybe it was a mix between the fact that I was hungover, I was rushing to get somewhere, it was early in the morning, and I was also looking at this new, very pretty ring on my finger. But I hit a pothole and I went flying over my handlebars, and I landed on the concrete and basically on my face. And I ended up not breaking anything. I didn't break my nose. I didn't take off half my face. I didn't get hit by a car, but I did break my 4 front teeth. And one of my teeth took a 60-degree angle back, and then the other 3 were fully chipped. And I kind of split my lip open and kind of busted my chin up and my nose up. But other than that, I was totally fine. So that was kind of a moment in time. It was pretty traumatic. I ended up having to wear a bandana for 3 weeks. So no scarring in the middle of the summer. It was definitely not in my summer plan, but whatever, honestly, scarring was super minimal. And NYU had basically put some stuff in my teeth to make it feel like it was normal, but I had to wait to kind of do bonding or veneers or anything like that, just by a couple months, just because everything was still so fragile. So fast forward a couple of years now, I did bonding. Then I did veneers because 6 months before my wedding, one of my front tooth started going black, terrible. So then I ended up having to get veneers, which was very expensive and not something I was anticipating right before my wedding. But that was that was cool. I got the veneers, and then we were settled for about 3.5 years, 4 years. And then all of a sudden, now this is about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I am on my book tour for Do What Feels Good. And I'm flying around. I'm definitely interacting with a lot of people on a daily basis. And, I'm definitely doing the most in terms of my lifestyle. I understand that I can be burnt out from my adrenals, all of those things. But I started experiencing what I look back as now as like chronic fatigue. And, my gut was working slower than normal. I was just, anytime I was sleeping, it wasn't proper sleep. Everything wasn't really adding up, especially for someone who really listens to their body, has been in very fight or flight mode before and understand what to do to get myself to the parasympathetic and how to kind of calm my nervous system. All the techniques that I have in my toolkit weren't really working. So that made me think something different is going on. So in order for me to kind of rule some things out and get to the bottom of some things, I took a blood test and sent it to a doctor who I really respect. And he's actually not located in New York, and it's a phone consultation. So I get on the phone with him. We've spoken many times before. And I said, hey, this is what I'm experiencing at a micro level, right? These are the things that my body's experiencing. This is how I feel. But then on a macro level, I'm trying to conceive and I've been having problems with that. And, I'm just wondering if you see anything abnormal. And he looked at my chart and he said, it's so interesting. I've seen a case like this. And before I ask you anything about it, I'll tell you what happened. And I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know. So he's like, I treated a woman who was trying to get pregnant. And she was in her early 30s, and she had a lot of off the chart, strep bacterias in her mouth. And I asked her if she ever experienced any dental trauma. And it turns out that she used to be a cheerleader. And when she was a senior in high school, one of her teeth was knocked out. Someone knocked her tooth out. So it ended up being that she had this infection in her mouth stemming from this old trauma to her, her teeth. So he then says this story and I'm thinking, okay, this is really weird. So he says the next thing, have you ever had any trauma to your mouth? And I'm like, well, actually 4 years ago, I got into a bike accident and broke my 4 front teeth. He's like, okay. He said, your mouth is a lot also, your mouth is very representative of your reproductive system. And he said, I think you have a really major infection. And he's like, I won't know for certain, but these are the next steps I want you to take. So he said, there is a practice in a dental practice outside of Austin, Texas, that he wanted me to go see. And I thought to myself, what? I'm based in New York. That's so crazy. He said, listen, it's not that I don't trust people in New York. There are good people in New York I can send you to, but the scan that I'm asking you to get, people in New York don't know how to read it the way these people outside of Austin do. And I thought to myself, what does that even mean? He said, well, you have to think about the dental industry. The number one surgery that's performed amongst dental is a root canal. And that's tried, true. Doctors make money off of that. And that is the way people go. But he wanted someone to read this scan whose objective was not just to go straight to root canals. For a lot of reasons, but he felt that my infection could be so bad that a root canal actually wouldn't really even get to the root of the issue. And actually, I had already had a root canal on one of my teeth, one of my front 4 teeth. Actually, I had a root canal probably just 3 months before speaking to this doctor, which he obviously did not like to hear. Okay. So then I thought to myself, okay, how am I going to get to Austin? Turned out that I had a book event in Austin, Texas the next week. So if that wasn't a sign, I was like, okay. And the practice is called Nunnally, Freeman, and Owens. And they are located in Marble Falls, Texas. Okay. So when I went to Austin the next week for my book event, I booked a car. The people at the dental, I think it's called Healthy Smiles or something. The people out there were amazing. They got me at the right time, everything. And I went and I got my scan. And the woman comes back and the facility is beautiful. And she's showing me like the rooms where they do lymphatic drainage before any of their surgeries and how they use these like, ozone, like injections of oxygen to help dissipate any infections, and just like a very holistic approach to oral care. And that's something I had never experienced before living in New York. And she tells me, okay, I have your results from the scan. By the way, this scan is called a 3D cone beam scan. Okay. So she's starting to read to me my results, and she's showing me the photos and things. And it turns out that I have 3 massively infected teeth. Like the infection is kind of so intense that their recommendation is that I have these teeth extracted. I didn't really understand what that meant. So my immediate questions were, okay, which teeth are they? And what does that mean for my veneers? And she said, the teeth are your 2 canines and 1 of your front teeth. And that my veneers would have to come off because a veneer only works when it has an anchor tooth inside of it.
I was just about to say, they probably would need to put in a whole fake tooth, right?
So, but because my veneers, I'd spent so much money on my veneers, and I was like, what do you, so they were like, your veneers got to go. And I was like, oh my God. And I like started crying hysterically. I was like, what? And she's like, I totally get it. This is a lot. Like, these are your 3 front teeth. Like, this is not, something in the back. Like, this is, I get it. And like, she knows my profession, the whole thing. And so she was like, this is, something I would really consider all of the things. And she said, but I can tell you that when I extract your teeth, we will get rid of this infection 100%. Whereas if I had just gotten root canals on the teeth, I would probably have to get multiple root canals, considering I had already had a root canal on this tooth and this tooth was still infected, right? So it was kind of either go down the path of still having a hard time getting pregnant, root canals, and not really getting the root of the infection out, or get your 3 major teeth that are structurally holding up your face removed, and pray to God that someone can cosmetically redo, what needs to be done.
We'll be right back with Hannah after this quick message. I don't know about you, but I never listen to the end of a podcast, so I'm hopping in here to let you know that the best way to stay empowered and on top of your health is to be in the WellBe community. So head to getwellbe.com/subscribe to make sure you're in like Flynn. On getwellbe.com, you'll learn about my private holistic patient advocacy work, my programs to help you go deeper and make life-altering changes for your health, and our awesome product database. If you're more of a social media person, let's be friends on the gram. Find me at getwellbe, GETWELLBE. And now let's get you back to Hannah's incredible story.
So I spoke to the doctor who recommended everything. After he spoke to the doctors there, he agreed with their diagnosis and next steps. So my husband took me a month later to Austin, and we went to Marble Falls, and I had my 3 teeth extracted. They put me under, like, just barely, like what I think it's like
nitrous oxide.
I don't know. I was fully
like gas?
I think it was more than laughing gas, because I don't remember, but I apparently was asking for photographs of everything that they were taking out. So the next morning when I came back to review, she was like, okay, now we'll go through all the photos that we took at your request. And I was like, pardon me? And she was like, yeah, you asked to see like all of like the matter and the teeth and the root and in detail. And I was like, oh, okay. So I saw all of that. And all of that was sent off to pathology. Right. And so when I got the results of that, I had 23 different types of bacteria that were off the charts infected. And 4 of those bacteria were the same bacteria that were found in my father-in-law's throat cancer. So I'm actually very glad that I got my teeth extracted, although it was very emotionally traumatizing. And it actually, doing it with this practice in outside of Austin, Texas, was much more affordable than anything that anyone in New York was telling me. Whether, especially anyone in New York, first of all, thought I was absolutely insane for getting my teeth extracted. In fact, I had multiple people calling me, advising me against doing this, whose opinion I never asked for. And it's, when you share your life on social media, that's what happens. But I did tons of research. I read this book called The Hidden Epidemic by a doctor named Levy, Howard Levy or Robert Levy, a cardiologist, and linking a lot of heart and mouth situation. Then I watched a documentary called The Root Cause, which was taken off of Netflix. And you can find it on YouTube, and you have to pay like $2 to watch it or something. The reason why it was taken off Netflix is because it was taken down by the ADA, the American Dental Association, which, by the way, Nunnally, Freemans, and Owens are a part of the ADA, right? They are part of that association. Yet they are on the other side of the thinking that, that dentistry is a part of your entire body, that your teeth are living organisms, that what happens in your mouth speaks to the rest of your body, including your heart, your reproductive. The tongue really controls most of the muscles in your body. It's funny, as I have a baby, watching a baby learn how to move, if a baby's having any sort of neck or tongue issues, it really affects their entire body. It's the tongue and the neck and the throat are the alignment of body development. And it's just been kind of amazing to be someone who's, loves to explore all the different types of everything there is in wellness, whether it's, a certain lifestyle, dietary or whatever. Like, you and I both have this love for knowledge and health. And so to discover a whole part of my health journey that I hadn't really paid so much attention to, oral health. Really, sure, it's something we're taught as children, brush your teeth, brush your teeth, brush your teeth. But we don't, it's always kind of in the medical world and how we view it, it's seen as like a separate kind of thing than your regular checkup to see how the rest of your body's doing. Like dentistry is it's like it's on an island over here, but it's very much connected to your overall well-being. And that's really what I learned through this experience. And 6 months later, after my surgery, I retested and I had 0 infection left in my body. And I got pregnant 9 months after the surgery that I had. So, it's one of those things.
Did your chronic fatigue type symptoms also go away, would you say?
They did. Absolutely. In fact, I could say that almost immediately I felt better. And it really wasn't until the end of my book tour that I started to really feel good, like really great again. But right immediately after, also because they did lymphatic drainage on me before and after my extractions, I was on a plane the next day going to a book event in DC. And I was totally fine. And the amazing cosmetic guy at the practice modeled my temp bridge off of my veneers. So I left there with a full grill. That was temporary, but temporary like for 6 months, like not temporary for a week. Like you know,
like livable, temporary. Yeah.
Yes, livable. And then as I finished out my dental journey, I found a guy in the city who would again make me these permanent bridges. But I really did not want to go the route of implants because you know what? Enough with my gums and the things going in and out of them. I'm good. I'd rather just like a bridge. I'm chilling. Like it's fine. I feel like it was like a very emotional situation. I just wanted to be as least invasive and swift as possible to kind of close the chapter on,
especially like getting pregnant or maybe already being pregnant, like any major surgery or drilling into your gums, like that's going to cause some inflammation, some potential for more infection, more, just more stuff you might have to worry about versus like, if you can handle it, just doing the bridges. Like I totally get that. Anything going into your body like that, it's emotional, like any kind of piercing of skin and blood and all of that. If you don't absolutely have to do it, I see why you did that. Well, that's an incredible story. I was going to ask you how you came to possibly think of this when I first heard you tell me the story. But now it makes a lot more sense. But, you think about how many people tell their symptom or their issue to a doctor who has no familiarity with something like this. And it's just so lucky that this doctor had a case similar to yours and could say, did this happen to you? It just goes to show you, like, you can be very trained as an MD and, triple board certified and all this stuff, or any other kind of health practitioner. But if you don't have enough different kinds of experiences and aren't, open-minded to like things that might work outside of your purview, it's hard to then help other people like you to think outside the box, to be like, have you ever, because that's all it takes to potentially solve something that seemed very random. And yet so few healthcare conversations go that way.
100%.
And like you said, it's like the most recommended, most normal, most, ka-ching thing to do would be more root canals or, let's do some antibiotics, see if it gets in that way. And then the next thing you know, you're wiping out so everything much good
in your gut,
bacteria. Meanwhile, you're trying to get pregnant. Say you did, then that affects your baby's microbiome. Like there's just,
oh my God, the whole thing.
The cascade of events that can go from that. Or another root canal causes yet another infection in a different tooth or whatever. So I feel like that's incredible. It's so lucky, but also I'm hoping this story being told on the show helps other people to think outside the box a little bit. If they're having any kind of chronic fatigue symptoms or infertility or just things they can't really explain that are seemingly random, but are actually very connected. And also not to underestimate how debilitating these self-infections can be that aren't necessarily taking you down the way like E. coli would, but
or like the flu or something, but how that like those chronic small things add up and really kind of like take you out in a way that you don't necessarily recognize, because it's like you're not so unproductive, but all of a sudden you're so foggy and you're like, what's happening?
Yeah. And you see that so much with chronic Lyme, which I had, and actual chronic fatigue syndrome, like CFS, and then mold toxicity. I've had couple of good friends struggle with infertility only to discover they were living with toxic mold in their home.
Oh my goodness.
Same kind of thing where it was like, they were still able to go to work, but it was this like overtime kind of like, almost like a boot standing on your neck. Like you're like, doesn't feel right, but also like, I can't quite tell what's wrong. And, I always I'm sort of obsessive about root cause analysis or root cause resolution. But in this case, how many things might've been done to you before discovering this root cause, or maybe never discovering this root cause, which have led to so many other health issues down the road. And most of all, like you said, your father-in-law, having throat cancer, and like over time, this bacteria being allowed to replicate. And then, a lifetime later, you're wondering how this happened. And you've got some really horrendous diagnosis, which
100%
not only would potentially kill you and be catastrophic for your life, but also from a cost perspective, you're thinking, you know, my veneers cost so much, or like this extraction costs a lot, but like, what does cancer cost? You know, it's like a whole different perspective in how you think about it, or piecing together many other kinds of procedures they might have done to you over several years or decades. So I just think it's such a good, I don't want to say cautionary tale, but it's just such an eye-opening experience that I wanted to have you share because, you know, and this is also somebody, like you said, you know so much, you knew so much before this about what to do for different chronic health issues. You had a great toolbox, and still you didn't, you know, think of this necessarily. So there's all these frontiers of health that are less known that I think, especially the gut mouth connection and the mouth microbiome and dental trauma and all of that is going to become a lot more, I hope, a lot more, I don't want to say mainstream because that's probably not the right word, but just there's going to be more awareness of it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next 5 years or so.
Yeah, it'll definitely be kind of like the next place that people will focus on. You know, I feel like people have spent a lot of time on mental health and like, you know, everyone's talking about the microbiome and the oral health, and your mouth is going to be a big, it's funny because so many like brands have like come out recently, but I feel like it's still early.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's why I think like the terms dental trauma, holistic dentistry, biologic dentistry, they're all like, it's totally unfamiliar to people.
Totally.
And most people, if I've ever mentioned it, are like, what the heck is really the difference? And I think, I mean, as you said, the real main difference is somebody who understands the mouth, the connection between the mouth.
As it pertains to the rest of your body.
Exactly.
I think it was actually the cardiologist in his book that, you know, made the comparison, like, you know, when a tooth dies in your mouth, or like when they say like the root dies, like that's when you get a root canal, right? But like if your finger died, you wouldn't leave it on your body. It would like rot and like have an infection that would go to the rest of your body. Like you cut it off. And so like to think that you don't do that in your mouth is kind of bizarre.
Right. Or why would you want to leave anything rotting? Even if you cleaned it out, it's
I know.
Dead. Like,
I know. Yeah.
Once this is a bit more mainstream or more attention is paid to it, I think a lot of people will all of a sudden be like, I've been thinking about this in such a weird way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Great. Well, this was so interesting. Like you said, you got pregnant, but you know, your health, especially during your pregnancy and postpartum, you feel like it was changed because of this procedure, right? Like this was really helpful.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Not only did like my micro symptoms dissipate, but the macro situation of my infertility also changed. So like all around win-win.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so happy to hear it. I'm so happy that resolved itself well. Cause
me too.
Unfortunately, in my line of work, there's just so many people. There are just so many people who come to me or, you know, get on a social media platform I'm on and tell me that, you know, they've been sick when they don't understand what are all these different things they're dealing with for like 12 years, 15 years. I mean, just goes on forever. And the number of like biopsies and tests and this and that they've had done as a result, you're just like, if one person you had talked to could offer something like what was explained to you as a potential cause, like how different their whole last 10 years would have been or something like that. So
I know.
Thank you very much for sharing this story.
Of course,
I really hope it opens a lot of people's eyes to this part of not just health, but microbiome health, which is such a focus at WellBe.
Yeah.
And I will definitely share the documentary, even if it's only on YouTube now. And
the book and the practice in Austin.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Hannah. Well,
it was so good to see
again.
you.
And
yeah, of course. Thank
obviously,
you.
tell the WellBe community where else they can find you if they don't already know who you are.
Yeah, sure. If you don't follow me, go ahead and do that on Instagram. I'm at Hannah Bronfman. You can also follow my wellness company at HBFit. We have newsletters for HBFit, and I have a bi-monthly newsletter called Hannah's List that you can subscribe to with my link in bio on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Thanks, guys.
So that's all for the first episode of season 7 of the WellBe podcast. Now, I'd love to know what's an action you can take right now based on what Hannah shared. Perhaps it's thinking about your own dental and mouth history. Have you had any surgeries or accidents that may have resulted in a stealth infection in your gums or your mouth? And if you have had any hard to crack chronic symptoms or even a full-blown disease, could some sort of stealth infection in your jaw or your gums be a root cause that you haven't considered? If you think you do want to take action related to your mouth and dental health in a holistic way like Hannah did, WellBe can help you do that. So head to getwellbe.com and learn how. Also, while you're there, become a WellBe Insider so that you can get all of our latest content, special offers, news, and personal notes I don't share anywhere else weekly in your inbox. Plus, you'll get a free copy of my audio guide on how to feel the best you've ever felt and heal anything. The 10 things you need to optimize your health and heal any chronic health issue, big or small, naturally. Even if you're the healthiest person out there, I promise you'll learn something that you didn't know before that can help you to optimize your health. If you haven't already and found this episode helpful or interesting, subscribe to the podcast. This way you'll never miss a new episode and they'll be delivered to you whenever we publish a new one. And please share this episode with family or friends who you think might find it valuable and informative. It means a lot and helps more people find the podcast. If you already have, then thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is your host, Adrienne Nolan-Smith, signing off, and thank you again for listening to the WellBe Podcast.